And I was like, but you look like the same shape. We're the same height, but their perception of themselves
reality was different.
Completely.
So I think that's important to discuss is just perception and how that, I guess, there's something that changes or evolves over time. So since you were young and you had those experiences, how has that evolved now, where now you can look at yourself and say, okay, I appreciate who I am. What does it take to get to that point where you're like, I appreciate who I am?
A lot of self-love.
Self-love.
Yeah. A lot of self-love. Like a lot of radical self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Womanhood Lectures, where each week we bring you topics and discussions on issues that matter to you, the modern day woman. We aim to inspire, we aim to bring some inquiry and some really good, healthy debate on issues that matter to you. I'm one of your hosts, Yasmin.
And I'm Lyra.
And we welcome you and would love for you to come and curl up with a great drink and join us for our roundtable discussion today. And what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about body image.
Oh.
But before we go into it, definitely we need you to like and share so that we can get this content out. It would mean a lot to us. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, as well as Instagram. So listen to us, connect with us, comment. We are paying attention. So that being said, our topic is body image today.
Juicy, juicy.
Juicy.
Where do you want to start?
I guess basically the first question is why is this an important discussion to you?
Because I have two girls and a son as well. So it's for men and women. But I think for me, it's really important because I see body image as something that really has a huge impact on your self-esteem. Okay. Especially as a woman. Yeah. I think a lot of things get presented sort of in the physical first. Not that I think that should be the case, but as women, we tend to be judged kind of like right off the bat by how we look.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you can't really get away from that. And so I kind of feel like it's important for us to work with it. And if you can have a healthy mindset around your body image, then everything else is so much easier. Mm-hmm. What about you?
It's an important discussion. I also have two girls. It's important to me to, of course, address it with them. They are both completely different. They both have different body types as well. So that's been something that, I've addressed with them. So body image, I think, is important to how you feel about yourself. And as you grow into becoming a woman, there's a lot of pressures that are on you to be a certain way or to look a certain way. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of pressure just from society. But one thing I want to mention that just came to my mind was that men also experience that too. To some degree, they have to look a certain way, be this tall, have this much muscle. I also do see that when I go to the gym or see that men experiences that as well. But I think the topic is important amongst women because we face it, I think, a lot more. Like we're inundated with so much content. Our daughters are inundated with so much expectation on how they need to look, how they need to dress, how they need to act. And I think it affects how they feel about themselves.
Well, it's in your face every day.
Every day.
Like go on social media.
Absolutely.
And there's like, look like this and be like that. And like, I don't know, like I feel like there's so much of a push for young girls to appear in a way that's like when we were growing up, you did want to look older. You wanted to look like a woman, right?
Of course.
But now you're actually seeing girls very young and you're seeing things on social media that's like, be a woman, own your body, own your sexuality. So much of it is tied to our sexuality.
Right.
And we're sexualizing our children through that
100%.
Process. Right.
Yes, I agree.
When you have like Miss Thing there, like with her booty hanging out in your face, and you can look at that anytime you want, and you can compare yourself to that, right? Like, because let's be real, like, what do kids do at that age? They compare themselves to other kids.
And
they compare themselves to, people who are airbrushed and who have Botox and who have like all sorts of like extra help.
Right. And that's the
extra
expectation,
support.
right?
Yeah.
That's the expectation that they're facing. So I can say that when we were younger, I'm still fairly young, by the way. But when we were younger, we played outside. We didn't have so much inundation with, the television, the iPad, the internet, this Instagram, that Snapchat. Like there's a lot of information coming at our girls. But I can say that even I was affected with body image. I think it's always been something that's just there. Like you have to look a certain way, dress a certain way, be a certain way because you're a female. Mm-hmm. But how I approached it was different.
What'd you do? What were the influences around you growing up?
Well, I had two sisters, right? And I know that if you think about, I mean, we had talked about this on our first episode where, I think that we were had a lot of pressure from our upbringing, right? We came to Canada, we're from India. So from a cultural perspective, I mean, you have to look a certain way and you have to be perfect and perfectly skinny and you have to be feminine and you have to carry that. But unfortunately, that's not realistic. For us. So body image for me was like, you have to be skinny and you have to be tall and you have to fit into that outfit. But I just loved being physical. Like I loved exercising. I loved going to the gym. I loved playing sports. So that was my saving grace as a child, to be able to like have that outlet and not feel the pressures, because I was just having fun playing sports. But then obviously as I got older, past my teenage years into my 20s, there was this pressure to look a certain way because, I'm getting ready to get married, right? Like I'm going to get married. So, you have to be thin and you have to look a certain way to meet the man of your dreams. It's very much a cultural thing. And then you have kids and then you're like, oh, well, I want to look like I did before I had kids. And that just becomes a pressure altogether for forever, right?
Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
So that being said, I think we as women start to look at ourselves, and our bodies are so, how we look, it's almost like a body dysmorphia of some sort. Like we just constantly obsessed with it. We're inundated with, you got to eat this and you got to drink this and try this diet out. And have you tried the keto diet? And have you, eaten this food? And make sure you stay from this because this is toxic. That we don't actually create the right behavioral habits in our lives to just be happy and be healthy, right? Does that make sense? So what is
that? How do you be healthy and happy at the same time when
it's
you
a
have
challenge,
all of that?
Right?
Yeah,
it's a challenge.
So it's interesting. I have obviously like my family. I'm a mixed background, so my mother's Filipino, so she's like this tiny little skinny beautiful woman, and all my aunties and all my cousins are like these skinny little waifs, and I was actually like bigger than everybody because I got my brown roots, right? I got my Indian side. So I was a little more robust when I was younger. And that actually played a lot into my psyche. I thought I was like really like this weird shape and I'm like bigger than everybody. And I thought I was fat. And I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What was I thinking?
Yeah.
How come no one told me like I was perfectly fine,
yeah.
Right?
And I was perfectly fine too, but I thought I was fat.
Who you're surrounded by.
Yes.
And what you're surrounded by.
Right.
Right. And it's funny because like in a way, like, my family didn't realize that they were kind of reinforcing it because they'd be like, oh, you're so beautiful. You're so like curvy.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh my God, they're just trying to tell me that I'm fat without telling me, without actually saying it. Right. And it was this weird dichotomy. And then, growing up in the 90s, like as a teenager, the standard of beauty then was like super skinny and super busty. Do you remember? Like all the supermodels were like really tall, really, really skinny, tiny little hips, but then really busty. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so not that. I'm like so pear-shaped and I'm so this and I'm so that and I'm so short and I'm like so brown and like, you know what I mean?
It's
like,
a lot.
It was a lot. So I went through like a massive period of just like absolutely hating my body. I didn't like how I looked. I didn't like, I didn't like even like how I looked like sort of ethnically because I didn't quite fit into like one category or another. I don't really look sort of Indian enough to be like a, you know, like a beautiful brown girl. And then I wasn't Asian looking at all. So they were just like, huh?
Who are you?
What?
Oh, I get that all the time.
It was, right. And so I get all of these like mixtures, like, are you this? Are you that? And so it was really interesting because I really I went through a period where I really didn't like myself. And it changed actually when I was in school, in university. And I got to do like a stint, kind of like a work placement through my work. And I was on the floor of a hospital where there was a whole bunch of girls that were had eating disorders.
Okay.
And so I got to see them, and it was interesting because they looked at me in my like muscular, because I was a dancer, right? So I was very muscular, fit, and they were like, "Oh, you're so gorgeous. You're so this. You're so that," and they didn't look any different from me. Like they really didn't. And I was like, "But you look like the same shape, we're the same height, but their perception of themselves
reality was different.
Completely."
So I think that's important to discuss, is just perception and how that, I guess there's something that changes or evolves over time. So since you were young and you had those experiences, how has that evolved now, where now you can look at yourself and say, okay, I appreciate who I am? What does it take to get to that point where you're like, I appreciate who I am?
A lot of self-love.
Self-love.
Yeah. A lot of self-love. Like a lot of radical self-acceptance, where it's like you look at yourself and you have to start really like loving parts of you, and like all the parts that you want to reject, those are the parts that you really need to love.
Yeah.
So if it's like whatever, pick a part of the body, right? Like, I don't know, hips. You got big hips. Well, you got to really like think about this. Like, I don't know, again, when I became a mother, everything just like shifted dramatically.
Right.
And I started like actually appreciating that, oh my gosh, like my body can like create life.
It
And
can.
right? And
Absolutely.
like my body is so there's so many wonderful things about me because I'm so strong. Right? Like I started focusing on other things other than how I looked. And it was like, what can I do? How can I be active? How can I, like, what does this body do for me? Right? To keep me healthy, to keep me active, like nursing. Like I can like literally for the first 6 months of my kid's life, I'm keeping them alive. Right?
Exactly.
Right out of my body. Like that was miraculous. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the human body's amazing.
It's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. That was fantastic for me. So that was a big shift. What about you?
Ooh. I think I'm still evolving. I've kind of shifted my mentality on my body. It's taken a while for me to do that, but I go to the gym every day and I created that habit, and I try to implement that and try to push other people to experience that as well. We're given this one body, right? And this one body, that's what we have for the rest of our lives. Like we're going to, live in it. So it's more, for me, I've made goals for myself of where I'd like to be. I don't put pressure on myself. I say, you know what? I'm just going to do this habit every single day. I'm going to work towards it. I have a goal in mind to lose a certain amount of weight, but it's like, I still eat whatever I want. Sometimes it's probably a bad idea, but at the end of the day, I just have fun with it. I stopped putting the pressure on myself, because there's one thing to be, to have a certain body image about yourself, but it's another to feel ashamed of it. Like it's not something that you should feel is like the definition of you as a human being.
That's
like it's
so
not
key.
like it shouldn't define who you are.
Right.
It should be something that you work towards if you are not happy with it. If you can change it, because some things you can't change. Like if you're born a certain way, that's who you are, But yes, I think that health is, and both of us have had experiences working in health. So I can say that health in itself is a beautiful thing. Like eating a certain way, focusing on changes to help have a longer life.
Yeah,
It doesn't have
absolutely.
to necessarily be for your body image. So that's what I try to teach my girls. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I feel like as I've been getting older, like the whole idea of just being healthy
Yes.
and feeling good in my body has been at the forefront of my body image now. So I don't really care now that I look a specific way. I care so I kind of like cater everything to how I look now. So it's instead of me trying to fit into, for example, a style or an image or a trend,
Right.
I now have my style and my body looks good in XYZ.
Yeah.
So that's what I buy.
Yes.
I buy the styles that look good on me. I buy the colors that look good on me. Right. And so I
Right.
kind of have like turned the tables on like style and fashion and like how I present myself to the world. And I find the things that actually work for me. And I find that that's been game changing, actually.
Yeah.
Because
So-
I used to think of it in terms of like, I need to look a certain way or I need to follow a certain trend.
Yes.
And I think we do that when we're younger,
Yeah.
but I've kind of outgrown that.
But do you feel like that it's kind of shifted a little bit? Like now it's more so, like, how do you feel the body image has changed? Like, do you feel
Well,
like
I
it's
think
more
I'm-
accepting now to be overweight or?
Yeah.
It's a lot more accepting, right?
I think it is like it's really interesting, like this new sort of like acceptance of everything. Right? And like even in feminism, right?
Right.
Like this acceptance of like everything's okay and everything's great and like
Right.
we want to do everything and be everything and you really can't.
You can't.
Right? And it's the same with body image. It's almost like even though we've gotten away from like having a specific standard, now that everything is fair game, everything now becomes like, well, you're beautiful. Well, of course you're beautiful. Well, sometimes there's standards of beauty that, generally everyone can agree on.
Right.
Like that, like if you're morbidly obese, you're not healthy.
Right.
And I don't think that's beautiful. I think that's unhealthy.
Right.
Right. And so if that's glorified, then I don't think that sends a good message either.
No, I think
Just
there's
as much
two
as-
extremes for
yeah,
sure.
just as
I
much
think
as,
it's
like,
very
being super
extreme to
skinny.
say that's okay. It's okay. I mean, hopefully you realize that there's going to be implications for your health in regards to that. But yeah, I mean, it's okay. You've got to do what you've got to do for yourself, or you've got to be who you want to be. But there are implications. So if you can slowly get to a point where you are healthy, like healthy is the word, right?
Yeah.
And I hope that the generation of children right now realize that it's not about image, it's about health. When it comes to being morbidly obese or overweight, it's more healthy. Like, how do you achieve health? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. But you know what? The thing is, they're inundated
They are
with
so
so
inundated.
much stuff on social media that I don't know if I'd be able to navigate that if I was a teenager right now. Like I think I would have like gone off the deep end. Let's be like honestly, because I would have just been like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of judgment online. Right. It's just so easy. It's so easy also to feel judged when you're not being judged, right?
Right.
How many likes have you got? You put on a cute outfit. Like how many selfies can you take?
Yes.
Right.
It's almost like an illness.
It's like an
to some
obsession.
degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
To some degree. Like I see teenagers everywhere. And I'm not saying just teenagers. Like these are like, we all do it to a certain degree, but it's really amplified
Oh, yes.
right now. Like it's really amplified online. It's really amplified in our culture. That like you gotta like looking good is something, and like airbrushing yourself. Like how many filters do you go through when you're posting a picture of yourself?
I know.
Right?
Right.
Online. Like we all do it. It's there. And it's really interesting that like we still feel that we need to do that.
Right. So what would be a good message to relate to like kids right now, like especially girls who are experiencing that? I mean, obviously we're both moms to teenagers. We kind of know what it's like in our world. And I can say that it's very challenging to have that discussion because you want to focus on health. You want to focus on the strengths that, that they have, and you want to focus on the good, like the good outcome of it all, right? Because eating disorders are a thing. You know what I mean? both ways, like either eating too much or eating too little. Like there's definitely an effect on the mind of girls when they experience body image issues. So that being said, what do you think is going to help? Like, obviously, I mean, I can take away my daughter's phone or tell her she can't join Snapchat, which she's asked me a million times to join.
My gosh.
But I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot to put, that kind of pressure on them, but they are being inundated.
Yeah, you can't take that stuff away, because that's literally like how people communicate and
exactly
how they
right.
stay in touch with their friends. I think really like part of it is being a good example, right? So
Yes.
in your case, like you go to the gym.
Yes.
Your kids see that you go to the gym on a regular basis, and they see that you care about what you eat.
Yes.
And like in my house, I don't hit the gym hard, but I make it a point to walk, to stretch, to do my meditations. All my kids are very, very active. So they all have like a thing, right? Like one's a dancer. One was in figure skating, right? Until she finished school. And then, so it's really more about incorporating things like activities into their lives, eating healthy. Like eating is 80% of the game, don't you think?
It is. Yes.
Like I feel like if I make sure that I have good, nutritious stuff at home, at least they don't have the option at home to be eating like crap.
Right.
Sure, they're going to go out and do their Uber Eats and like fast food and whatever.
Yep.
But for the most part, they're home, and so for the most part, I can control a lot of that. And like if I own, like I still think that like if I own myself, and if I show up and I'm like appreciating how I look, what I do, like things that are important to me, my kids will sort of naturally pick that up.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if it's something that you need to always focus on and have a big discussion around, but it is something that you need to model.
Yeah. I think generally they're not alone though. Like every single girl and woman experiences this at one point or another, where they're kind of just like, oh my gosh, I look a certain way, or I have to look a certain way, or there's certain pressures. So I don't feel that young girls should feel like they're alone. They're not alone in this. There's obviously resources or ways out of it, and out of feeling like ashamed of their body or feel ashamed of themselves, because it's not everything. Like it's not everything to just look a physical way. There's a lot to a person. There's, the personality that you have, the things that you can bring to the world. And that's what I try to teach my children is like, you're not just that, like you're multiple things and you are an amazing human being. Okay. But yes, I think that you're right. They mirror us, they mirror our behaviors. And if we could help out anybody else, in this world, and when it comes to girls, it's, focus on the things that you can control, focus on those little habits every day. Focus on, the stuff that like, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm sure we could talk about how food these days is not that nutritionally balanced, right? We could talk about so much more.
Yeah.
But I think just to kind of get to the point is that, nutrition's a huge part of it, and health itself is the reason.
Yeah. And you know what?
And should be the reason.
Yeah. And surrounding yourself with a tribe of people that have kind of similar values. So like I said, like my girls and my son now, like they're part of a sports team, for example.
Right.
So when you're on a team with people who are doing the same thing as you, that's a huge thing. Like getting your kids involved in certain activities, because then that puts them in touch with kids who are also interested in activities, health. They probably have parents who might, have similar values to you because you're all doing the same things.
Yes.
So I think that makes a big difference, because that social aspect is huge.
Yes. I can say that was my saving grace as a kid.
Yeah.
Was organized sport. Being able to just play sports. It's not even about the physical aspect of how I looked. It was more about just confidence and courage and being able to build myself as an individual. I think that that's a benefit to children these days. I think we take our kids out of sports because maybe there isn't enough time or there's a lot of effort involved, for sure. Sometimes kids quit. And I can tell you, good experience that I had was that I didn't let my daughter quit. And she thanked me afterwards. She thanked me that I didn't let her quit swimming.
Oh, that's
And she
good.
became a swim instructor, and that was amazing for our journey together. But don't let your kids quit.
Okay.
Let them stick it through till the end, and you'll see like an actual evolution of who they become.
So I do that year to year. I
Okay.
used to do that every year. I'd be like, if they're halfway through the year and they're sort of struggling, I'd be like, you got to see it through to the end of the season.
Yes,
Because
yes.
you've made a commitment now to
Yep.
other people. So you have to show up.
Yeah.
And usually by the end of that year, they're like, okay, like
Yeah.
I like this. I'm going to go back.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to
Right.
it.
Yeah. So it's always like a question of just like kind of moving them through those tough moments.
Right.
But yeah, organized sports are the best thing that
Best
you can
thing
put your
for them,
kids in.
honestly.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't matter what it is.
She used to always cry in the car, and
my
snot
gosh.
was hanging down
Oh
her
my
nose
gosh.
as I would drag her into the lesson. But she's thankful
hilarious.
to this day, right? And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where sometimes we do have to take control and say, these are the things that are good for our kids to keep them away from social media and all the inundation. And this is what I'm going to do to support their growth, because it does help a lot.
Love it.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
You know, some mom out there for
Yes,
sure.
someone out there. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you guys again the next time on the Womanhood Lectures.